Lots of people expecting that regression out of the Detroit Lions, which is interesting because they're still plus 160 to take the division. And I think it's going to be hard with the Green Bay Packers sitting right there at plus 240. I know Jordan Love is a little banged up, but you look at the additions they've made this season. I really like their rookie they picked up, Matthew Golden, and I think the Green Bay Packers have every opportunity of really challenging the Detroit Lions there.
Welcome into episode 4 of Couzin's Conversations. Joining me, an elite pro in the betting analyst game, JoMadden, joining me, and I'm happy to have Joe on. But first, before we get to actual betting discussion, Joe, I want to just hear how you got started in the industry.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey into this industry, something that I never expected to see myself in. I was always a huge sports fan, coming from a super competitive family, but straight out of school, it was like into accounting. That was the path that my aunt took, my grandmother took, my mother took, and I kind of just followed in those footsteps, and I didn't love what I was doing. I was running my own accounting business, and it just became kind of a fluke that I got into this industry because I was always talking football. I wrote around. Long story short, it led me to sitting where I'm sitting today, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
So no original background in sports betting, in accounting. So what was that early grind like for you to get into the biz and build up your following?
It was a really interesting journey because at that point I was already starting kind of like a lifestyle podcast, and I was doing the betting on a side, and I was really talking it so much with my accounting clients as well as friends. And then when I decided to transition into that, I started my own shows. I started that daily grind of sports betting because we know sports betting doesn't take a single day off. So it was an interesting start for me. It went faster than I expected. It was kind of like a snowball effect. Once I started going, I started getting noticed pretty quickly as a woman in this industry that was able to keep up with the men. So it was interesting. It was fast. And yeah, it's been a ride.
When did that realization come to you that this could be your full-time profession?
Well, it was during COVID. So during COVID, I was looking at my accounting clients and realizing that my staff could provide the services that they needed because they needed to scale down their costs. And at that point, I wanted my staff to still be employed as well. So I had to let those clients go, and then let my staff be able to just build those clients themselves. So both the client and my staff won at that point. And then it was a win-win for me because it allowed me to let go of those obligations and just dive full force into this industry as soon as sports opened back up. So that's where the driving force, that was the turning point. That's where things all changed during COVID. It was that transition over and then the full dive into it.
When you made that transition, what was the breakthrough moment?
I don't know if there was a breakthrough moment. It was the realization, I had a show called Hustle and Grind, and I was able to get Mike Davis, the late, great Mike Davis, on the show, Eric Dickerson, Harvey Armstrong. I had these amazing old school football talents on my show talking about their journeys and their inspirations to play the game. And it was different from the betting side of things. But it really was one of those moments where it's like, okay, if I can get these connections with these greats in the game, prior in the game, that I can really, anything that I try to do, I'm gonna have success. And I've always been a big believer in myself that way.
How did you start to sell yourself early on as, just your personal brand and things like that?
Yeah, so it was just a daily hustle, right? Like a daily grind, getting everything out there. My cup of joe has been around for a long time, and I think that's what I'm really known for is my daily cup of joe, just playing on my name being Joe and my love of coffee and just that quick little sports betting take. And I find in this industry, those short segments, the short content is what captures people's attention for that long enough span so they're not scrolling because it's only 1 or 2 minutes. So I think that was really my first big push into this industry, and then from there the recognition just came.
I do enjoy those cup of joe segments. Those are some good segments there for sure. Creativity as well. How do you balance that entertainment value of those clips versus like actual betting analysis?
I try to give as much information as possible without making it not redundant, not boring, but like just to give the information so it knows that what I'm backing up, right? Because it's a hard balance as a female in this industry where I've got so much more that I'd like to say, but too much information is just, it's going to get people scrolling. They don't want to know all of those numbers, but not enough information. It's like, okay, she's just another female that really doesn't know her stuff. And she's just telling you to bet from, she's flipping a coin. So there is that balance, that weird mix that you have to have where I could give so much more information in those cup of joes. But when you're limited to under 2 minutes, I'm really trying to nail those cup of joes with one game to, a minute 30. It becomes hard, right? Because you want to give as much information as possible. And there's a lot of times where I could have given, 10 times more information. I could have talked that game for a good 20 minutes. Because if I'm giving out Cup of Joe pick, I've done, an hour and a half of research into what I'm looking at. I've gone over all the props of those games, all the different angles and why I'm really liking it. So it's a funny mix because I could talk forever, but you got to really limit your content on there.
How did you find out over time what to look for when you're looking at analytics or bets, things like that?
It's for me going over everything that I think before. So looking at one of the matchups I had today, I looked at the matchup first game of a series in baseball and I kind of went, okay, where should I see this line? What should I be looking at with these starting pitchers? What have I seen out of them before? And I kind of like make my own lines up in my head. And then I go into the books and see what the books are doing for a total, what the books are giving us for those pitchers for their strikeouts. And then when I start to see a variance in what I would have believed the line would have been at, what this pitcher's strikeout props would have been at, then I start digging deeper into those games and looking at where the books are coming from and what they're seeing that I didn't see. And then if I'm still believing based on what I originally thought that my bets could get there, and that's my process for every single one of these games, is then diving further into it and then trying to come up with different angles, right? Like looking at a pitcher versus the team that he's going to be facing, how he's done over the last couple, if he's looking for that bounce back angle, if he's been really roughed up, or if he's had like a really hot August and where he is road and home and those kind of splits. So there's so much to look at, and that's just baseball, which you can dive into. So there's tons of stuff. Like I said, I'm looking at a game. I could look at a game for probably 2 hours going over everything because you've got so many like props that you can jump into now. It's absolutely crazy, but fantastic all at the same time.
Yeah, prop bets are a whole nother crazy a thing that I've seen in the betting world. Just when you're seeing all the bets, and I know some of them, some of them hit, but when they don't hit, how do you like approach that feedback, or how do you like maybe are you like a little like nervous not going to hit, or how like what are your feelings towards that?
Oh, absolutely. Every
Yeah.
single bet you put out there, that gut feeling of if this doesn't cash, because not only is my money riding on it, but people who follow me, they're deciding to put their money on it as well. So it feels like a lot of weight and responsibility on your shoulders when you're saying, hey, like I've got this team on the run line, or I've got this team run line first five, or I've got the Nerfy, I've got the Yarfy, or when we're talking football, the first quarter and everything like that. So it's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of weight, but a lot of these situations you can look at and their reasoning behind my bets is always there. So if we come out and a pitcher just absolutely gets lit up in a game where he's taking on a team that normally can't hit lefties and he's a lefty, and for some reason he just has that bad day, at least there's enough behind my bets where I'm like, okay, I had absolutely every reason. I would have gone in and bet this exactly the same way with the information I knew. Like the only time where it's like really the worst is when you had a feeling and you changed it based on what the books thought, where it's like, okay, I believe this, and then the books have it like this. I definitely have to be missing something. And then you kind of change your gut reaction and you go, okay, I'm going to go under instead of over. This is just not looking right. The books are trying to trick me somehow. And then you're like, I knew, I should have known. Or when you're losing by the hook, those last minute runs in the ninth inning, or the last minute touchdown that just kill your bet where it shouldn't have happened. So those are the ones that are the hardest, but it's always your money and your followers' money is on it. So it's a lot of weight.
Yeah, or the quarterback goes out early because that's a big game,
Yeah.
or they're up by a lot or whatever. I went to Kansas, so last Saturday they pulled out Daniels before he hits the over on yards, but stuff like that. So I'm
The
sure
over
people,
on yards, and I had his passing and rushing. So that was
yeah,
238 and a half, and he hit what 170 for his passing and what 40 something for his rushing. And so it didn't get there. I was so
yeah.
furious.
Yeah, it took him out for the last two possessions. That
Yeah.
was kind of a bummer. But when you look at betting videos out there, I mean, they're huge views, huge
Mhm.
likes on social media. What's your perspective on the growth of sports betting and where the content piece can go?
It's interesting because I think the market became so flooded at one point, but I think it's coming a little bit more down where you're getting more quality over quantity, which I do think this industry needs. We definitely need to make sure when you're watching someone and you're following someone that they know what they're talking about, because I think a lot of people jumped into this industry thinking it was going to be, some quick money from followers like buying their picks and stuff. But I think those kind of people have been taken out of the market. And I think this is a fantastic market that is expanding and is expanding with the right creators and betters out there. And I love what we're seeing.
How do you handle that spotlight when you have such a big following?
Um, just how I handle everything in life. It's kind of like I don't let stuff like that go to my head. Those people are following me for my content. Personally, would they be my friends outside this? Who knows, right? Like, would they want to grab
Yeah.
a cup of coffee? Who knows, right? So I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I've got so many followers on X. I'm actually really weird about it. I'm gonna not lie, Nick. So people recognize me out and I'm like, who? Like, and I just want to run away. I'm like, you don't know me. I'm not JoMadden. I don't know who you're talking about. So I'm kind of weirdly shy about it that way.
Yeah, you gotta stay a little humble, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So
Yeah,
it's a weird
yeah, I get recognized sometimes too, and I'm like,
thing.
do you really know me? Like, I don't know. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, so no, but it's all good at the end of the day. But what advice would you give, or maybe like something that people will want to know trying to get in sports betting or get better at sports betting?
Yeah, so anyone wanting to get into the industry, I really do believe like just be yourself, because I think a lot of people try to come into this industry and portray something else and it will always come to the surface, right? So if you're able to just come in, be the person you are, and I think need so many different like personalities out there. You don't have to pretend to be like anyone else. And then just know your stuff. And if you don't, there's nothing wrong with saying I have no clue, right? Like I can remember the early years and I would go on shows. And I think as a female, I was kind of in some situations by some males who didn't want me in the industry, treated different. They'd say, okay, we're talking hockey. And then we would be live on the radio. And then it wouldn't even be hockey they're wanting to talk. They're wanting to talk college basketball and these like odd teams that, you really have to do your research into. And so I learned very quickly if I didn't know, instead of just, babbling through something, to just be like, I don't know, right? I don't know about that, but I do know about this. So let's drive the conversation towards something that I do absolutely know. And I think it gave me that credibility where it wasn't like, I'm just trying to tiptoe around things. So I really encourage anyone who is wanting to get into this industry. You can't know every single team. You can't know every single player, but if you pretend to, people are going to see through that. But if you can generally come on a show, talk about the things that you do know, learn the things that you don't, and just admit when you just don't.
Once you got that credibility, how did you see kind of that mindset shift in people, or that change towards their perspective on you?
Yeah, it was really interesting because when I first started, it was she's just another female. She has no clue what she's talking about, right? So I had that, and you'd lose a bet, and everything one would be like, see, she's just another female. And then as I got deeper into this industry, it shifted from that to be like, well, a guy's scripting her, right? Like she has someone in her ear. And it's funny because my Puck It with Joe, my live hockey shows that I do every single day during the hockey season, I talk every single game all I could think was, I can imagine if some guy was in my ear. I'm trying to do a live show. It's like an hour and a half, depending on how many games we have on the day. And someone's telling me what to say and how am I reacting to those live comments. So that's where they comments started to go. And then it kind of got squashed by those live shows and people just realizing, well, she's able to do this. And obviously she's not. And then my time with Sports Grid, we were 4 hours on air talking every single game out there that was happening during the day on in-game live. So really had to work my way to prove myself. But I'm so glad finally people are believing that it's me and not someone else. And it'd be crazy if it was.
And here you are now. So we love to see that. But I do have to say the weather outside is getting a little crispy and a little colder. So we do have to talk some NFL coming up. Now I do have like a bone to pick with the books because I am a Bears fan. So I looked at the NFC North odds and they're picked last. I don't understand why they think that. I mean, I understand it's a first year head coach, but I mean, you look at the Vikings who have a rookie quarterback. The Packers, Jordan Love, still a little suspect, and then the Lions lose both coordinators. So can you just explain to me maybe why the NFC North odds are the way they are for me?
Well, you look at it, the Chicago Bears up plus 550 right now to take the NFC North. I understand it. I really do. It comes in the faith of this team. You got to wonder what we're going to see out of Caleb Williams this year and if he's going to be that guy. Now, I do think he has that step up in class with Ben Johnson, your head coach now, and I do think we're going to see some adjustments, but that is a hard division. Lots of people expecting that regression out of the Detroit Lions, which is interesting because they're still plus 160 to take the division. And I think it's going to be hard with the Green Bay Packers sitting right there at plus 240. I know Jordan Love is a little banged up, but you look at the additions they've made this season. I really like their rookie they picked up, Matthew Golden, and I think the Green Bay Packers have every opportunity of really challenging the Detroit Lions there. And then the Vikings, rookie quarterback, like you said, but they've got the weapons out there. So I think this division is going to be a hard one for all of these teams to really battle it out. I do think you're getting a ton of value with the Chicago Bears at plus 550 when you look at the holes on the other three teams. So I'm not sure if they take the division, but I don't think it's going to be as easy said and done as the books are saying that it will be.
Well, that's good that I can provide value for some people. I don't even not even in the betting industry. So there we go. But and then I guess everyone else is looking at NFL stuff too because everyone's been missing football. We've been having baseball all summer. With week 1 coming up, what are some other bets or maybe a popular bet that people should look at?
Yeah, so week 1 bets I haven't jumped into yet. I want to look at the full rosters and what we're seeing. We are seeing a lot of movements and that kind of thing right now with August 26th right on the horizon. But I do think there's some win totals to look at this upcoming season. So just pulling them up here on FanDuel. I always look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we know Aaron Rodgers added to the Pittsburgh Steelers this season. I think he will have success. I think Rodgers got really a bad rap over going with the Jets, and we know the injury year and then last year those struggles, but under Mike Tomlin I have a lot of hope for him there. I do think he has the weapons. So looking at the Steelers for their win total, Mike Tomlin always has this team riding nice and high, right? We know he can get those double-digit wins. So looking at them, we've got a total of over 9.5 at plus 170. You can take the regular number over 8.5 if you think they're just going to get those 9 wins. That's coming in at minus 110. I do like that. And, I'm a Chargers fan. I'm going to stay off my Chargers win total, but the AFC West is so hot this season. And I do think one team a lot of people are underestimating is the Denver Broncos. I love what Sean Payton has clicking with this team. You look at Bo Nix coming into this season. People are expecting a little bit of regression after he overperformed last year, but I'm not seeing it. I do think Bo Nix is going to come out so strong. That connection with Cortland Sutton, and you look at that backfield with J.K. Dobbins, which they did steal from my Chargers. And then R.J. Harvey, I think he's going to move up that depth chart. And talking to Sean Payton, and he talked about his statue and how he's not the biggest guy, but how he runs, that he's going to be exciting. So I'm looking at the Denver Broncos. I'm looking at them. Last season, they were able to get those 10 wins. I do think they get there. Could they get 11? They absolutely could if they can get some really pivotal divisional wins. I also look at this team and, you hear the saying, defense wins championships. And I do think this defense is going to be one of the best in the league. So over 10.5 wins for the Denver Broncos at plus 160. I'll put a half a unit on that. I will take their normal net 9.5 at minus 105 as well. But I think you definitely want to look at the Broncos this season. I think they're in for a big year.
Yeah, it's crazy to hear that because the AFC West has been so dominated by the Chiefs for so many years. And I know my Chiefs friends from Kansas and Kansas City, they're just like, oh yeah, Mahomes and the Kingdom's on the ESPN app to watch and all those things. So it's nice to hear that the AFC West is maybe caught up to the Chiefs now.
Oh, absolutely. And you look at the books and you look at the adjustments in the lines, and actually, these lines are looking different from when they did last week. So we're looking at the Kansas City Chiefs only minus 105 to take the AFC West with the Denver Broncos right behind them at plus 280, the LA Chargers at plus 310 and plus 1200 for the Vegas Raiders. Now we know Vegas did lose O'Connell, their second backup quarterback, sitting there. He's out 6 to 8 weeks. So I understand that move, but the Broncos to move up past the Chargers, that's a huge move that the books have made. And for Kansas City to only be minus 105, it's really interesting because I do think Denver has every possibility of taking that division. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs, you look at those issues last year, especially in their secondary. And I tell you, the Broncos could take the AFC West, even though I'd love to see my Chargers be able to do it. I just don't see it happening with Slater out of that lineup. No protection for Justin Herbert's blind side.
Such a wild thought. It really is. But when you look, I mean, we can do college football too, but like if there just any football, do you see maybe a like futures bet that may be undervalued or something that people should look out for?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Just let me look at some player milestones here because I don't have anything just in front of me, but I do think we could look at probably some passing yards. Now, Joe Burrow for that 4,000 regular season passing yards, those numbers are just getting too highly juiced. We have seen a lot of movements in those divisional. We talked about, let's just look at some conferences. I think it's interesting for the Baltimore Ravens there. You're looking at the Baltimore Ravens to take the AFC championship. They're coming in at plus 340. And then when we look at the NFC championship, we got the Eagles again. It's going to be really interesting to see how they come out. I really don't love putting a ton of money in futures other than win totals because I do worry about those injuries during the season. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, and if Hurts goes out of that lineup, things just dramatically change. So the futures for me in the conference and the I look more at the win totals as well as the divisional winners over the conferences. But I definitely think you could look at things like that. You could look at some player milestones, but again, you're relying on those injuries not to happen. I normally, and I hate doing it when I'm looking at players for the full season, I normally look at the unders because we know the general public wants to take those bets to the over, in the books make money for a reason. So looking at those players to the under, nothing really that I've jumped into as of yet for those players. Because again, when we're betting the NFL, it's a long season. We're investing our money here in August. This season starts September. We're riding that out all the way into the playoffs. So it's a long time.
There you go. There's the key. Look at over for win totals for futures. Now, I know we're still not in hockey season yet, but I know that's a bit of your specialty.
Yeah.
What are we doing for the Panthers? Are the Panthers going to just keep winning Stanley Cups, or how are we looking at NHL season?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I don't understand why the books are doing this. The books are still looking at the Carolina Hurricanes as the odds-on favorite. They are at the same plus 750 between the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, the Hurricanes coming out of a weaker division, I understand why. They've got an easier path every single year within their division to be able to get there, but I do think the Florida Panthers have every ability of three-peating. Now, interesting there, though, Matthew Tkachuk will be out for an extended period to start this season. But you look at Florida, and they were able to wrap up their key core players again. And I do think that has them having every ability to take the cup again. So you're looking at plus 750 for the Florida Panthers to hoist the cup. You can take them to take the Atlantic Division, coming in at plus 155. I think it's going to be interesting to see how these teams play out a lot of their seasons as well, because we know in hockey it's such a grind with how many games. We've had that addition of a couple of games there as well. Teams will take their foot off the pedal at the end of the season. And when you're looking at those divisional winners, it doesn't matter as much to these teams like the Florida Panthers last season. They don't care about home ice, right? This is a team that can play on the road or at home. And the Carolina Hurricanes, they were a team that couldn't even play on the road this season. So where the home ice means some more. So I don't like those divisional ones. I do look at these teams again for their win totals, their ability to make the playoffs as well. And I think that's where you're getting the best odds. But the problem is, you look at the Edmonton Oilers to make the playoffs again, it's minus 700. So you've got to really look for those long shots out there that you do believe with their pickups in the draft and with who they have traded for, who's returning, that they have every ability. And then you look there. So one team that you could look at further down the list that has the ability, we know the St. Louis Blues, solid team out there. They're still a minus 120, so you're not getting the value. The New York Rangers are a plus 150. They've got to make some big adjustments from last year to be able to get things done. But I would look at the Winnipeg Jets. Again, we know how deep they were able to make it into the playoffs last year. They're coming in at plus 170 to make the playoffs this upcoming season, and I do think it has value.
And you're in Canada, so what are the perspectives of these teams like the Oilers and the Jets, who, or I guess the Maple Leafs too, who like win every year, get to the playoffs, but just can't get over that hump?
Well, no one has faith in the Toronto Maple Leafs, not even Maple Leafs fans at all. Being out here in Calgary, we kind of laugh at Toronto all the time. But Calgarians, Calgary Flames fans as a whole, they just don't want to see Edmonton be able to hoist that cup. Winnipeg is a really interesting team in the way that Canada kind of supports it. Canadians, it's kind of like, oh, it's Winnipeg. No one is upset if the Winnipeg Jets make it deep. We cheer for them, but fans in the hockey community, otherwise, they don't really cheer for any other teams. So I think Winnipeg, if they can get past those hurdles, they have a really solid team. I know they've lost a couple guys, but most of their core coming back. And I think they have the ability to go nice and strong. Edmonton, being here in Calgary, I know a lot of people over the rest of the country will root for the Edmonton Oilers, but Calgary fans, just not so much. It was funny in the last playoffs going out to the pubs. There was a whole bunch of people just booing every time Edmonton touched that puck in Calgary jerseys. So it wasn't even like they were cheering for Florida. But for myself, you have Matthew Tkachuk that came from here. So we're always cheering for him.
I forgot that Matthew Tkachuk was on there, but that was like a big time trade that Florida made that changed the whole course of their organization.
Absolutely. But we had Huberdeau stepping up last season, so we'll see what the Calgary Flames are able to bring in this year. Calgary is one of those teams that, we've got young goaltending with Dustin Wolf. We did trade Dan Vladar off to the Philadelphia Flyers, so we'll see what Calgary brings this season. I do think they're an interesting team. They overachieved last season, and we'll see what they're able to do this year. Now, the books are thinking they're going to make the playoffs. They're minus 240 to do so. I wouldn't be putting my money there at that kind of cost, but Calgary does have the ability to really step up this season if Dustin Wolf can handle the pressure this year.
I grew up in the glory days of the Blackhawks when they won the 3 Stanley Cups in 5 years. And I know they're not even showing signs of really coming back to those glory days just yet. But how do you view like young teams like that are still rebuilding, but have some big stars in place like Bedard and Frank Nazar?
I think it's really interesting looking at teams like that because they have every ability to really make a push and surprise a lot of people. They have the young talent on there, and it's a hungry talent as well. Like you get these older players, and some are hungry because they're trying to reach milestones, but some are still going just like through the motions, right? We could name a couple of those players on many teams, but I do think Chicago is really interesting to see what Connor Bedard is going to be able to do this season. He looked so dejected at points last season, and I know he says he wasn't, but it's got to be hard on a player like him, coming from the world where he was just such a superstar in his minor league days, right? And then coming into the big leagues and really getting rocked out there on the ice. You see those players coming after him and just trying to, give him a lesson out there. And he is a smaller guy. So we'll see what he's able to do. But I do think the future for him is bright. I think Chicago has every ability. I like teams like that with the young, gritty players. I think Utah is going to be interesting to look at this season and see what the Mammoth are able to do. And then we've got teams like the Buffalo Sabres who they have talent up and down. They're never able to get off that hump. I think a lot of these teams have to start off hot and fast, and we'll see what they've got in the tank to finish the season.
Let me know if you think this is a good idea. I know the Blackhawks, they usually bring back like veteran players past their prime, but Patrick Kane, he's still playing at an elite level and he still lives in Chicago in the offseason. I think you bring him back for maybe a year or two and help Bedard there on that line, that first
Yeah,
line.
absolutely. It would be great to see him back with the Chicago Blackhawks. I do think Connor Bedard needs to be surrounded by veteran players like that, players that are willing to really, help him out there. I loved when Taylor Hall was with him and contributing. And I just think the Blackhawks need to give him that support. So the more support, the better for players like Connor Bedard with those veteran players around him for sure. So add Patrick Kane. That'd be one heck of a deal.
PSA, Chicago Blackhawks management. There we go.
There you go.
Making moves here. Well, Joe, I appreciate you coming on. You provide a lot of perspective on just getting into the sports betting industry, how you got into the industry, and then talked about the pro sports coming up. Everyone's getting excited. The weather's getting colder in the Midwest and in Canada and where you are at, and everyone's excited. So appreciate you joining me and giving everybody something to look forward to, which is what we all want to have in the sports world.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. It was an honor.
If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment. Have a great week, everybody.